In this video, we're going to be looking at the 3 different pickup modules that are available for the hardwood and bamboo Chapman stick models. These are the Stickup and then 2 interchangeable block modules, the ACTV-2 and the PASV-4. We'll be doing sound tests on these pickups with 2 instruments that are set up in the same tuning and string gauges so that you can hear what they sound like under similar playing conditions. The Stickup is a passive stereo humbucker based on Emmett's original idea of having a very sensitive pickup to pick up the tapped vibration of the strings, but full range to cover the whole frequency output of the instrument. There are carbon fiber filaments embedded in the injection molded plastic, so it has excellent hum rejection properties. Each string has its own pole pieces so that you can adjust the level of the strings independently to each other. This bottom melody string has only 1 pole piece, which helps cut down on crosstalk between the 2 sets of strings. And there's a volume control for each output, and each output goes on its separate line out the stereo cable. So this cable you can see has 2 leads coming out of it, 1 for the bass side, 1 for the melody side. The pickup itself is mounted on 4 screws from underneath and held in place by these top screws. And if you adjust your pickup module, you can set it so that its height is about even with the top of the frets, and then the pole pieces themselves shouldn't come out above the top of the pickup, but they should go down into the pickup in order to balance the strings out with each other. On the bass strings, typical effects you might use would be compression, filtering, sometimes delay, overdrive, or even reverb if you're playing chords. On the melody strings, you can use anything that a guitar player would use: distortion, overdrive, reverb, delay, tremolo. All those things sound great. I'm running all of these instruments into the step-about so I can have level control over the outputs of the pickups. The PASV-4 is a lot hotter than the ACTV-2 and the Stickup is, so in order to get a good sense of the tones, I don't want to be running them all with the same exact volume setting. I do add a little bit of low-end boost and a little bit of low mids, especially when I'm just running direct into a recording system. For amplifiers, obviously you'll have tone controls on the amps, and that makes a different kind of a situation. I'll also be running the melody side into this Pigtronics overdrive, and then into this Boss metal zone to give you an idea about what the pickup sounds like, overdriven and distorted too. For the sound tests, I have 2 instruments that are almost identical. The Wengi Grand Stick here has the Stickup module on it, and I also will be using a Rosewood Grand Stick, which has either one of the block modules on it. The tuning for both instruments is classic with a high bass 4th, and they're medium gauge strings. They're not brand new strings, they're pretty well broken in, so I think they sound pretty balanced with each other. So now I'm going to play the Stickup through the preamp, and you're going to hear first the bass strings and then the melody strings. We'll start with a long tone on the bass strings, a low D. Now I'll play across the strings at that fret too. And now at fret 7. And now here are some chords, G minor, C minor 7th, and an F 7th, all at the same fret. And now here's some harmonics. Okay, now for the Stickup melody side, first I'm going to start with a long tone and F sharp. And now I'll play each of the strings across that fret. Now here are some chords at the 10th fret, C minor, G minor, D minor, and A minor. Now those same chords an octave up at the 22nd fret. And I'm not adding any vibrato or extra energy or compression to the sound, so you can hear the natural sustain of the strings. So here's the bass side of the stick. Through the bass amp, I'm going to play a little groove with some chords and a bass line. And now just a few clean chords. So here's the stick-up sound through the amp. First I'm going to play it clean, and then I'm going to add overdrive, and then I'll add heavy distortion to it. The ACTV-2 is one of the two block modules which are available on all the different stick instruments. It has two active EMG front telly humbuckers in it, one for the melody side, one for the bass side. And these pickups are really very warm sounding, but they have a nice clear attack, a little softer attack than the Stickup does. And they also have a tone control for each side so that you can roll off the highs. It's an active treble shelving EQ, and a volume control for each side. There's a mono switch which allows you to run both sets of strings through the bass side's output, which is the tip on the tip ring sleeve jack. You can plug in a regular guitar cord and play through a single amp channel if you're running it in mono. And there's a trim pot inside the pickup for each set of strings to balance the levels out in the mono mode. This little shim on here is to balance the level of these two bass strings out relative to the other strings. Because there's no height adjustable pull pieces on there, this gives you a little bit of subtle control over the volume of the strings for those. And each pickup also has the ability to change the angle of the pickup relative to the string set. So if you want to bring it up closer to the thinner melody strings, down a little lower for the lower melody strings, that'll balance out the string set as well. Starting with the bass long tone low D. So here's that note. And again, I'm not using any compression or extra energy into the string. That's just the natural sustain of the string as it rings. This pickup seems to have a little bit of natural compression of its own as far as the sound goes. So I'm going to play across the strings here at the 2nd fret. And now at the 7th fret. And now I'm going to play the same three chords I played at fret number 5, G minor, C minor 7th, and F 7th. I just love the way this pickup rings. And here's the harmonics. And now I'm going to repeat the same tests with the bass strings with the tone rolled off about 2/3. So the volume is a little bit less because we're taking highs out. It doesn't add anything back in, so the volume will be a little bit lower, but it'll give you an idea of the tone of the strings with the treble rolled back. Now across the strings. And at fret 7. And now those 3 chords we had before. And now the harmonics. Okay, now for the melody side, we're going to do that long tone F sharp. Again, no compression, no extra energy added, just the natural sustain of the pickup. Moving across at fret number 12. And hear those chords. And fret 22. I'm going to repeat everything with the tone control rolled back about 2/3 of the way. And the volume will be a little bit less because we're taking out highs. It's not an interactive filter like the PASV-4's filter. It is a shelving roll-off. So the volume will be a little bit lower, but you'll be able to hear how it mellows out the sound. So here's the long tone. Now across the strings. Now the chords. Same chords up here. Now we're going to play the melody strings through the guitar amp, first clean, and then with a little overdrive, and then with distortion. And I'll do that same test with the tone rolled back, maybe not quite as much as I was rolling it back when I was running direct, because we are going through an amp after all. Really like what the ACTV-2 does with distortion. It's really my favorite pickup with distortion. Okay, so here's the ACTV-2 through the bass amp. First the groove. And now the chords. And I'm going to do the same test again with the highs rolled back, and again, not quite as much as before because we are running through an amp. All right, the PASV-4 is the other block module that we have. It's the same size and shape as the ACTV-2, although the mounting holes on the top are in a different place. But you can, if you have the mounting holes drilled for both on your instrument, you can very easily swap them out by unscrewing these two screws and just sliding the pickup module out. The PASV-4 is 4 Villex pickups. They're all passive, and the electronic components are all passive as well. For each set of strings, you have a neck pickup and a bridge pickup. And then you have a 4-position pickup selector switch and a 4-position filter for each pickup set as well, and a volume control. Now the filter on this pickup is not like a conventional electronic filter. It feeds the magnetic energy of the string back in through the pickup, so it doesn't lose its volume when you change the filter setting. In fact, it actually gets a little more present in the low end, and you'll hear that in the demonstration. The pickup itself has a mono switch which routes both sets of strings through the melody side. Because it's passive, that disables the filter and the volume control on the bass strings. There is a trim pot right here on the bass, on the melody side, so that you can adjust the volume of the bass strings relative to the melody strings in the mono mode. Other than that, it's got a couple of these damping shims on here to balance out the bass strings. For each pickup, there's a height adjustment screw at each end, as well as a tilt control. So you can very subtly control the settings for this pickup. It's pretty amazing how well you can balance out the outputs of the strings. Okay, so I've turned down the volume a little bit on the preamp so that the level of the PASV-4 won't be too much. But this time I'm going to show you the variety of the pickup sounds and the filters as well when I go through the test on some of the settings. So here's that low bass D. And here are those notes across the frets at fret 2. And across fret 7. And now the chords. And the harmonics. Now I'm going to show you what the filter does to the sound. I'm going to just use the chords as the test so that you can hear that nicely, what it does with the harmonics when the chords are ringing. So here's the filter bypass. Position 2. Position 3. And position 4. Okay, now I'm going to show you the both pickups in phase. Low bass D. Across the strings. Fret 7. Chords. This pickup sound, you can hear it's a lot brighter, janglier sounding. Here's the harmonics. All right, now here are the chords again with the various filtering positions. Position 2. Position 3. And position 4. Now here's the out of phase position. This is a very interesting sound. It brings out a lot of the high harmonics. It's definitely would be used more as an effect than as a, quote, bass sound. So here's the low D. Going across the strings. Fret 7. Chords. And harmonics. So now I'm going to play with the chords with the filter settings. Here's bypass. Position 2. Position 3. And 4. I just love hearing all that different harmonic motion in there. Now the bridge pickup. Across. Fret 7. And now the chords. Harmonics. And now the chords with the filters. Position 2. On some of the pickup combinations, the filters do more drastic things than on others. On this one, I noticed that the lowest filter position really brings out the bottom of the notes, whereas on the dual in phase, you don't get nearly as pronounced an effect. It's a lot subtler. So with the filters, they move in the same direction of the pot. So we're going from 1, 2, 3, and 4 here on the melody side. But the pickup selector reflects the positioning of the pickups themselves. So neck, both in phase, both out of phase, and bridge. So here's that low tone, starting with no filter, F sharp. And now strings across. And now the chords. And up here. And here's the chords with the different filters. Okay, so here's both pickups in phase. Long tone. And now across the strings. Now the chords. And up here. And now the different filtering positions. Okay, both out of phase. What's interesting about this one, there's all kinds of interesting high harmonics that come in way up here at the higher frets. So here we go back to the filtering. Now the bridge pickup. Now the chords through the filters. Really hear it start to take the attack out of the sound of the string. I tend to like to use the combination of the neck pickup and with the third filter setting, and the out of phase pickup on the bass side with the second filter setting. One of the nice things about this module is that you can have different tones on the different sides of the instrument, which gives you the ability to hear the parts very distinctively. Okay, so let's look at the PASV-4 through the bass amp. We'll start with the neck position pickup, full open on the filter, and I'll just play one time through the bass line, and then I'm going to switch the filter. It gets a lot fatter as you get down there, especially because we're going through a bass amp and I've got the bass EQ turned up on the bass amp. Now both pickups in phase. Both pickups out of phase. Now the bridge. And now for the chords, I'm just going to go through, leave all the filter settings at the third setting and just go through the pickups. Both in phase. Both out of phase. I love hearing all those harmonics over-ringing in this out of phase position. And now the bridge. You can hear that octave harmonic creeping in there. This pickup brings out so much interesting color in the strings. Okay, for the amplifier test on the melody strings, I'm just going to use the third filter position. And here's the neck pickup. And now overdrive. distortion. Both in phase. Both out of phase. And then the bridge. I hope you found these tests helpful in making your decision about selecting the pickup for your stick. It's always great to hear the tonal variety of these different pickups. Each has its own personality and its own strengths. So I could never say that one is better than the other. It really just depends on what you're looking for in your music. Happy tapping.